So welcome to the ArchiCAD training lesson on hot-linked modules. We're going to take a look at how you can use this very powerful feature of ArchiCAD in a variety of different ways. I'll first just draw a little simple building envelope here and create a partition. And let's just imagine we have a space like an office space. I'll make these little tiny offices or little rooms. Take this wall here and multiply it here, say 3 copies, and I'll take this, let's see, 10 feet. Okay, so this last one is a little bit tight in there. Okay, so now we have 4 little rooms with similar sizes. Now I'm going to go and let's say, whoops, put in some furniture. This is just one example of how we can apply hot-linked modules is when you have a repetitive situation. So let's go and pick out the simplest sort of office setup that we could. So we'll have a desk here. We'll rotate this around like that. And I'll put this against this wall. And then I'll get a chair. Here, let's get just a simple office type chair. And we'll pop that in. All right, so now in this layout for this space, let's say that we wanted to have a similar layout in each of the other rooms. Well, we could go in and copy these. So I can go use the multiply command, Command U or Control U, and do similar ones, sort of snap it in here to the same distance. Of course, this room is a little bit different size, but basically we now have 4 separate copies. The limitation with any type of repetitive design like this where you copy it is that if we decided to switch out this chair, to be a different chair like this, or change anything else about it, none of these would update. And one of the sort of most obvious purposes of a hot-linked module is to link designs together. So let me just undo the last couple of steps here. And let's turn this simple configuration into a hot-linked module. So the way we can do that is to go to the File menu, External Content, and say Save Selection as Module. So what this does is it takes what was selected, so these 2 elements here, and it saves it in a special file format with the ending MOD. And so I'll just go into, let's say, I go in to lesson folder for week 18, because this is week 18, part 4, and we'll just say hotlink demo mod. I'll just put it with a 1, so it'll be variation 1. So I've now created that. Now when I did that, you notice that these elements here changed to being to having square dots. That means that these are now referenced to that external file. That was a mistake in the sense that I missed out on one thing because I just wasn't thinking about it. So let me undo. Actually, it doesn't let me undo that. That's an interesting issue here. What I'm going to do instead, since I can't undo it, I'm going to go and go to the hot-linked module settings. So this group of elements here is a hot-linked module, and I'm going to break the hot link. So this is what would have happened if I had done it right. In fact, I'll start over. So these elements here, I've selected. They are not a hot link. Let's just start over, and I'll tell you what I missed out. So if I go to External Content, Save Selection as Module, what I want to do is turn off Replace Selection with this hot-linked module file. So we'll talk about when you would want this checked, but in general, the simplest thing is to not have that checked. So I will go ahead and, in fact, I'll just overwrite this. I'll just click on this name here. It'll allow me to put the same name here. I can say save. It will overwrite this file. So now I'm doing it the correct way, let's say. Now these elements here are, uh, I guess they ended up being grouped. Let's go and suspend groups. So now I can select individual items, and they are still in this project file, still editable just like any other element. But what I want to do is go and place a hot link. So I'm going to place a hot-linked module. So that's File, External Content, Place Hot-linked Module. Now, a hot-linked module is basically a copy of an external file. And the file can be a simple thing like just a few objects like this, or it can be an entire building that's being referenced from outside. Each element in the module can have its own layer. So if you were doing an entire building, of course, some things would be on the wall layer, some things would be on cabinets, some things would be potentially on slabs and structural layers. But they all are going to be controlled by a master layer. So what is a master layer? It's one of the standard layers, any layer that you choose on your project, and it will control whether this entire module is seen. So right now I'll just leave this alone. It's on an annotation reference layer, which is, maybe makes sense. There's some other options here which we'll explore later, but basically what I need to do before I place is I have to choose a hot-linked module. Now, I guess because I created one, it has this available already. It says that I could place this, but let's just see if I say choose hot link, you'll see that it's referencing this file that I just created a minute ago. So when I say place the module, you see initially it shows up exactly in the same X and Y position as it was when I created it, but I'm going to go and drag this, just like anytime when you paste, you can move within this marquee to a new position. You can snap it, move it around. Once I am satisfied with its position, I can click outside, and now these elements are in position. And I can select them. Now you notice that when I select it, it's got these square handles. That means that I cannot edit them. If I try to move it, press down on with this and move it, it will not let me do that. In fact, you can see that it in the info it says part of HLM, so hot linked module, and that it's an object in this case. Now, if I have groups active, so by unchecking the suspend groups icon here or using the equivalent keyboard shortcut, then when I select one element, it selects both of them. And actually, I can move them around. So I can move this. What I'm going to do is actually go and place a copy. So by dragging it and pressing and releasing the Option key on the Mac or the Control key on Windows, there's a little plus sign that gets added. And so I can move this into a new position. So this is now another copy of it. I'll just drag it into position touching the wall here, which is how I want it to sit. And I'll drag another copy, so I'll perhaps use the other option, drag a copy or the keyboard shortcut here and place it over in this position. So now these, you may have noticed, have different colors. So if I select them, you can see these sort of brown and blue and sort of greenish dots, whereas these are round dots. These are elements that are grouped together. So there's subtle difference visually here. These elements are editable. These are referenced to the outside. So that'll become abundantly clear in a minute. When I go and, let's say, take this, we'll suspend groups here so I can edit this chair individually, and I'll go select a different chair, say this one here, and maybe I drag it back, and I'll just sort of move it off to the side a little bit so it's even more obvious that it's a different arrangement. So I'm making this as simple as possible for demonstration, but a module can really have dozens or hundreds of elements all combined together in a design configuration. Now, what I've done here is I've actually, changed the elements that created that module, but I have not updated the module itself that these are referencing. In order to do that, what I'm going to do is select those same elements, and go to the File menu, External Content, and say Save Selection as Module. Remember, that's what I did to start this out. I don't want to replace the selection with this hot-linked module file. Remember, I'll explain that in a few minutes. But I'm going to go and overwrite this. So basically, I'm choosing to update or overwrite this version. So I'll say Save. And it says, do you want to replace it? And I'll say yes. Now, nothing has happened visually here because these hot-linked modules are not updated. In other words, while I change the external file for that, these elements have not been updated. To update them, there's a separate step. You go to the File menu, External Content. Now, nothing is selected, so Save Selection as Module is not available, but Hotlink Manager is the one we want to look at. So in the Hotlink Manager, it'll say, there is a hotlink in this file, and you could have many of these if you potentially find them useful. And it says that this one has been modified. So there's an option here to update. So when something's modified, if you want it to be up to date, you click this Update button. It queues up the update here. There's a little note saying that it's going to clear the undo queue. So this is something you have to be aware of, that some operations in ArchiCAD will, when they take place, you won't be able to undo back. I mean, you can manually modify things, but you can't just do undo, undo, undo. Let me just say OK, and you'll see, look, all of those updated, instantly. So the idea here is we have a source for the design that we're working on. And this could be repeated dozens or hundreds of times. If you might imagine a condo project that's 10 stories, and there are 6 units on each story, you might make one change, update the MOD file, and have 40 or 50 copies all update. Now, you could have multiple different modules. So for example, if it was a hotel, you could have, the basic rooms, and then you have the luxury rooms or the larger rooms, or, you have different apartment layouts or different office spaces. Maybe there are ones for clerical people and ones for management people, and etc. So anything that you're going to be repeating can be managed in this format. Now, let's take a look at the mechanics of this in terms of where this sits and some of the options that we have. So I'm going to bring up my the actual folder where this saved. Got this off to the side here. Let me go into here. So I've now got this folder, and you can see this module is a little file, 78 kilobytes. So obviously it's just 2 little objects, so you'd expect it to be very, very small amount. Well, so in terms of what are some of the other variations that we can do with a module? So let's say that we had some walls going down this way. Now, I'm not worrying about, too much about the sizes of these, so this is just for demonstration purposes. Let's say that we wanted to have 2 rooms going this way, but they're oriented 90 degrees. Well, if I select this module, if I don't have groups active, then I can't do much with it here, but I can, if I activate groups, then I can drag a copy. Now, just like I can drag this, I can also, let me just make sure I drag a copy. So I'll drag and use the Option shortcut or Control key shortcut. Now this I can rotate, so I can press down and use the rotate option here, and we'll just drag this down into position. And of course, then I can drag a copy down to here. So all of these are still linked, even though this is in a different orientation. So let me just go, prove that. We'll go and, select, turn off, or suspend groups again. We'll go select this, and let's change this desk to, let's say, do we have a corner desk? So let's just see this desk. Oh, here's an L-shaped desk. Okay, so we'll take this and maybe just orient this here. Okay, so now that's a different type of arrangement. I don't know, maybe the chair should face the corner rather than this way, but this is certainly another option that we might try. So let me select these two, and we'll say that we want to go to external content and save selection as module, and we'll again overwrite this. Now I'm going to show you some other variations of this here, but let's just say we overwrite it, replace this, and how would we update this thing? Remember, we go to the File, External Content, Hotlink Manager. It says it's been modified. Click on it, say Update, and say OK, and now they all change. And of course, these ones were sitting in the same relationship to the corners, so they look fine. These maybe, we might, in this case, want to, with groups active, select these two and drag them into the corner if that was important to us. So you can see that they'll all update in, regardless of the orientation. Now, what if we have some text as part of this? So let's go and just put in some text here, and let's say office, like that. And we'll take this and drag it over there. So let's say that we wanted to have text as part of this. Again, I'll go select this, and we'll save selection as module, and we'll again overwrite it here, and then go to Hotlinked Manager, update. All right, so now you see that these look fine, but the word office here looks funny. I mean, just certainly I might want to have it horizontal. So let's go and select this text and look at an option that is very powerful for this case. And that is, it says always readable, and we could say fixed angle. So this is something you have to use carefully, but this basically says that the text, if it rotates, or let's say if it's part of a group of elements that are rotated, the text will not rotate. It'll stay at this 0 degrees. We can also lock it, let's see, perhaps its center as the anchor point as opposed to the corner. That means that its center point would stay locked, which in this case would probably work well. So I'll just say OK. So that text doesn't look any different here, but if I select these elements and again do the update, or save the selection as module and update this, and or overwrite it, and then go to Hotlink Manager and update these, you can see that now the text, even though the geometry of the elements is rotated, the text stayed fixed. So there are different options you might consider. Certainly the always readable is nice. If it did flip over being upside down, it would actually sort of rotate itself to being either facing down or facing to the right. You can experiment with that, but that is at minimum what I would leave it most of the time. But the fixed angle is one that you can consider. And remember that this anchor point determines what point is going to be constant. If it does rotate, what point is going to be used for the angle measurement. Now there are some options here for relative and absolute to coordinate system. These are things that I don't want to cover right now, but these can affect the way that this works. So let us see some other options. So in terms of the Hotlinked module, if I select this module here and we right click on it, there's an option to say Hotlinked module settings. So it allows me to set up some preferences for this particular module. Now you'll see that it already knows that this module was rotated 270 degrees, or 90 degrees going clockwise. So that was handled, but notice that there's this other thing here, which is elevation. So suppose that we had a split level construction, or we were placing elements like perhaps even an entire building repeated multiple times on a site. You can say, I'd like to move this up or down. So in this case, 0 on the story is fine. That's exactly what we want. But there'll be times when we want to actually move it up and down, so we can rotate it, and we can also potentially move it up or down relative to the story. And in fact, if we put it on as another story, then it would make sense that it would have a height relative to that story as a reference. Now, there are some things about the heights of elements. In this case, these are objects, so the heights are relatively independent of the story structure. A chair has a certain height, a desk has a certain height. But if you were to do things like walls, just imagine in ArchiCAD 17, you can say that an interior wall goes from the floor level up to the ceiling level, and maybe the ceiling, that for typical construction, that the ceiling space is a foot or 300 millimeters or something like that. And so you can say that I want, these walls are locked in at 1 foot below the next story. And then by doing that in ArchiCAD 17, if you did change the story structure, in other words, make the story taller or shorter, then the walls being linked to the story above would get taller or shorter. It's a powerful feature added into 17. So this is something that only exists in 17, this option. It does allow you to say, when I put these elements into another story or another project, perhaps, the top linked elements will stretch. That would be very powerful, but sometimes that's really not what you want. You want to just have it be simple and say whatever height they are, they'll just stay that same height. Now you notice that this module is linked to a particular location. Here, if we had multiple hot links in the file, we perhaps could change that. I think that I'm not quite sure why this is gray here, because this, so I'm not quite sure about that. Let's just defer that for a moment. And I'm going to be looking at some other options in here in a minute. Let's look at the master layer for it. So you notice that if I suspend groups here, that this chair is on the A equipment layer. So it actually probably should be on furniture, but for now it's on the A equipment. Whereas this text is on, a text layer, A anno text. So what that means is that all of these elements, when they're displayed around, are controlled by those layers. If I go and open up my palettes for quick layers here, and then say that I want to hide the text, so I can say hide the layer that the text is on, you'll see it, they all go away. So in other words, just like you would expect, if I undo this, if I do the reverse, if I take this and say hide this layer, then all of the other ones go away. So it is just like standard elements. However, there's one extra feature, and that is that if we go into the layer dialog, remember that there was a layer, a anno refer, I guess, reference annotation, which is the master layer for this module for these copies. If I turn that off, just that single layer off, you notice that all of these elements disappear. So the original elements are there because the text layer is on, the equipment layer or furniture layer is on, but the master layer has been turned off for these elements. So this is a powerful feature here to control the hot links as a whole. Now, let's take a look at some of the ways that might be used, or I'll just discuss some things. If you were doing some, large-scale planning, you may want to have, some plans where the common design elements are hidden, and you're just showing the partitions or the sort of overall plan of a complex story. So by turning off that master layer, you can hide those things. Now, in master template, I'll show you how that's used. I'm going to go in and we'll open up a copy of master template. Let's just actually say new file. And I'm going to use master template here and launch a new instance. So we'll have in master template, we'll have show how that's used. In master template, we have these components that are used for eyedropping. These are a set of commonly used or frequently used elements that I call the interactive legends of visual favorites. So legends being something that we're all familiar with. You put a bunch of elements down with some description saying this is an outlet, this is a receptacle, this is a switch, this is a ceiling light. These are symbols and a little explanation. But in terms of them being interactive, you can eyedrop them, and so these elements that you want to use repeatedly, you can go and eyedrop and drop into your project very quickly. Well, one of the things that we set up in master template, and hopefully this will come up soon, is that have this kit of parts, the interactive legends, off to the side of the main project. But we didn't want them to show up when we weren't focused on it. So what we did was we put the interactive legends, their master layer, on a special layer we didn't use for anything else. And I'll describe this because it also allows us to look at some other uses of the master layers here. So we've got our master template file here. Now, if I zoom out to fit in window, you can see that this is all we've got in this basic starting point for using the template. Let me go and turn off the trace and reference so you can see that this is all that we've got. We've actually just got a couple of sort of site. This is a slab for just the building would sit on. Here's some, a few walls and a roof. And if I go to 3D, we'll see, just the basic starting point. It's expected that you're going to delete those and start fresh, but by having a few elements on there, it allows us to set up the template in a convenient way. Now, if I go to the layer dialog here, you'll see that there are some layers up at the top that in our organizational structure that are called master, have the word master as part of them. So these are master layers for modules, for hot-linked modules. The legend, which is what I was just describing, you can see it's turned off. So that's why when I said fit in window, we weren't seeing anything. Now, if I turn this on temporarily, you'll see some stuff show up. There's actually a little warning dialog that says that when that layer is turned on, you are now seeing the interactive legend elements. So this is just a little warning. But if I now say fit in window, you'll see that there's this whole kit of parts, a whole lot of elements off to the side. So by having these elements, which are really, let's just, with groups active, you can see when I select one element, it selects all of these. All of these elements in this area are part of the hot-linked module for the interactive legends. Now, there's actually 3 modules here. There's a second one in this area and a third one here. These allow you to have in master template your own office favorites in one section that are easy to add to. And then for some projects, you might even want some special components that you put in for just that project there. But if I go back to that layer, and I say turn off this module legend layer here, you can see how these just disappear, even though, and just to really make it abundantly obvious, when I turn it back on and I zoom in on them, these elements are all on different layers. So for example, this, let's suspend groups here so I can select this individually. This is a bathtub. It's on the P plumbing layer, and this car is on a landscape layer, etc. So they're all on individual layers, but if I go and I hide that legend, it'll disappear. Now you notice that in this master template, we have a master layer for buildings and one for other. So certainly a very powerful way to use hot-linked modules is to have buildings on a site plan. So imagine that you have a project with 3 buildings and they're all on one site. While you could work on all 3 buildings within the same PLN, the same project file, sometimes it's convenient to separate them out. particularly if the buildings really are not closely related in terms of story structure. If they're not really tied in to the same underground infrastructure, parking, things like that, then having them separate can simplify management. I mean, for one thing, without having to use any teamwork or collaboration um, technology, you can have two different people working on two different buildings. Another is that your whole layout books and everything are just focused on one particular building, but perhaps you want to see all three of these buildings on the same site for visualization. Maybe you're doing some, walkthroughs or animations, or maybe you're doing some overall site plans or overall elevations of the entire project. So you could then hotlink in an entire building. But maybe you want to turn off that information sometimes because you just want to see the site without these buildings. So by having a layer especially for that, it just means in master template, there's something already ready for you to put in a building. It could also be used maybe if you have existing and you're adding new stuff. Now in ArchiCAD 15, Graphisoft introduced the whole renovation uh, system with a renovation palette and filters and things like that. So it's not necessary to do a renovation project this way, but sometimes it's nice to just say we have existing stuff that's context that maybe isn't in the same building, but it's just nearby or it's part of the site, and you just want to turn that off. So you could use that. You could hotlink it in um, that way. Now we also have one for module for other, and that could be used for different things, perhaps even phasing. So in other words, we could have another chunk of work that's going to be done later on, and that could be a module that you turn off or on. So all of those elements could be on their own layers, like walls and furniture and equipment and slabs and roofs, but you can turn the entire building or the entire phase off. Now, obviously, you could have more layers than this controlling it. We aren't going to go overboard and create 5 of these since most people aren't going to use them, but this just gives you some ideas, and you can always add more for this purpose. Now let's take a look at what happens when you do have buildings or multiple story structures that you want to hotlink in, and talk about how that works. So I'll go back to this simple untitled project, and let's just give it a name here. So let's just say, here we'll say hotlink model 1. Okay, so that's now a simple file here, and let's then maybe just go in. Let's select everything here. I'm going to copy it. We'll go up to the second floor, and I'll paste. So now I have 2-story building, but let's say that it's not really, I'll just sort of eliminate some stuff over here. Now, that's interesting. I just noticed that these elements, when I copied and pasted, they did not stay as modules. That's sort of did not expect that. I expected them to stay as modules. So that's something that let me just undo this here, and let's go back to that first floor. What happens if I select these with groups active, and we'll just select a few of these elements here. So you can see these have got square handles, and this has got the round ones or normal handles. I'm going to copy this. We'll go up to the upper story, and we'll paste it in. And now if I select this, yeah, okay. So if groups were active, then I was selecting the module as a whole. If groups were suspended, then I was selecting the elements individually. And while I couldn't move those elements because they were locked in terms of the module, they could be copied and pasted individually. So that is an interesting way to essentially break the link if you want it. So let me just undo that, and we'll go back down to this story here. And now I'm going to go and repeat this operation. I'm going to select this. We'll go with groups active, you can see the groups are not suspended. So these, you can see the square handles and the different colors of them. So I'm going to copy this, and we're going to go up to the upper story and paste here. And now if I select this, yeah, this is a module. So it's linked in. Now let's say that this upper building, upper part was not the same layout. In fact, let's just take this marquee, and we'll go in with a single marquee, or a thin marquee. I'll go and stretch this back, to there. So now this upper story is a different layout. If we go to 3D, we're going to see that we've got now uh, two stories that are not quite, well, they have some different configuration there. So I'm not going to worry about completing this as a building. Even putting in doors and windows is not too relevant or important right now. But let's just say that this design is somewhat interesting. So I'll go and, first of all, save this Hotlinked module file. I'm, in this file. I'm going to start another file here and just start it with the same sort of standard Graphisoft template, because I don't want to complicate this. Now, I think I accidentally did not leave that one open. I think, so this is now I've closed the file that I was working on. Let's just go and say that I want to bring in a hot-linked module, but instead of, now you see there's no hot-linked modules available because I haven't put anything into this new file, but let me choose a hot link. And if there were ones listed that I could pick from them, because just imagine if you were doing a hotel, you could say, I want to put in, one of those queen size modules or one of the king size room modules or things like that. You can pick which one. But here I'm going to say new hot link from file. So this button here, new hot link. And now I have a choice. This is a little confusing and sometimes can, I've gotten support emails saying, why can't I select my hotlink file? It doesn't show up in the list. Notice that, this MOD file, I can't select. Why not? Why? Because it says I'm only looking for solo projects. If I switch this to module file, you'll see how that becomes available. Well, actually, in this case, I want to select the project file as a whole. So this is the entire building. So this is that scenario of bringing in an entire building into a larger site plan. I'll just select this. It says, do I want to bring in all stories? There were 2 stories here, or just a single story, in which case I can pick one or another. But I'll say, no, I want both stories. So here I've chosen this. It says it's going to be multi-story. And I guess I'm not quite sure, it's indicating a certain story that it's going to use as a reference. I'll say OK. Again, it has a master layer. I'll leave that alone, but it could be any layer that you have. You can set up a special one for it. And I'll say place module here. And it says it's going to paste in 2 stories. Which one corresponds? Because maybe actually I'm got a site where we've got a different story structure, and I want to set it up on story 3 because stories 1 and 2 are underground, or I don't know, something like that. But here I'll say no, it matches to the first story. I'll say OK. Here it comes in. Well, let's put in another copy of it. So I'll just go in and again say place hotlinked module. It knows that this exists, so I can simply place it. I don't have to select it again, although I could go and choose a different one. But let's say we place it again. So there's 2 copies of this here, and I'll say put it on the first floor, again, and say OK. Now it put it in exactly in the same place, but I want it off to the side. So let's just say I'll just move it straight over to the side for simplicity here, and let me just select this elevation marker and put it off to the side there. So now if I go to 3D, we're going to see the same building twice. And if I select any element on here, you can see it selects all of them because groups are active, not suspended. Now, of course, I can elevate this or rotate it. So let me go and select this. Let me rotate it here. And we'll, just move it something like that. And perhaps I'll say that this is a different height on the site. So I'm going to go and I can do this through the standard like elevate command, but we can also go into the hotlinked module settings and say, I want this elevation So here's where I rotated it 90 degrees, but I can say the elevation, let's say it's going to be up 8 feet above that story or something like that. Now, we do have a little bit of an issue here that when we move it on this story, the uh, visual representation has changed because these walls are now considered overhead. So there are going to be some considerations we'd have to work on, and perhaps we might create a separate view for that. But when you're bringing in multiple buildings into a larger project file, we may be more looking at just a 3D. So if I go to 3D, you can see that it's rotated, it's also higher in space, et cetera. So we can, work with that. And notice that the word office stayed horizontal, and so it actually looks pretty good. This one is actually a little bit tight because of the way it was centered. But for the most part, that's done an excellent job of keeping it all legible there. Now let's just go and say, what if we were to change the design on this project? So one way that we can do this is I can select this Hotlink module, right click on it, and say edit this module in a separate ArchiCAD. Now this has been around for several versions of ArchiCAD, this particular command when you select a Hotlinked module saying I want to work on it. When it first came out, it may be that some older versions didn't have that, so you'd have to go into the File, External Content, Hotlink Manager, and then you could select this one. And we have Hotlink. Oh, actually, so what this is interesting. I'm glad this came up. Remember the demo module is the little office design. So that is the one that is just the table and chair and the word office. And then this one is the building as a whole. So we could edit either of these. So this is the alternate way. If I wanted to be very specific about which part I want to work on, then I can do that. So actually, let's just say that I wanted to work on just the little office layout. I can go say open in separate ArchiCAD, and now it will open up ArchiCAD again, and hopefully this will come up. Now, by the way, it says, is this muted on purpose? That was 138. Are you guys hearing me okay? Let's see if you are hearing me. Okay, good. So I guess it was there was an issue temporarily. Okay, so we're opening up another ArchiCAD, and I'm just going to do a very quick little change in that ArchiCAD, and we'll just see how it all updates. So far what we've looked at is how you can create a simple single story configuration with a few elements and have them repeated everywhere, how you can create a multiple story, a full building, and have that be linked in. And of course, in this case, it's nested. So let's see, why are we not seeing anything? If I say, oh, for some reason it was zoomed to a different location. So I just had to say fit in window here. So let me just drag this. We'll just select this and make it yet a different chair like this. There. Okay, and I'm just going to say save. So I just do Command S or Control S. Now this is a module file, so this is an MOD file. It actually has less information in it than a regular PLN. So in fact, when I open it up, you'll see that there's only one layout, just the default single layout, single master, because as an MOD file, it's really intended to be used just as a design component as opposed to a full layout book. So when we saved it as an MOD, it didn't try to bring over all of the layouts. And in fact, there are no views defined because it's just essentially raw materials. Now let me go back to the ArchiCAD file I was just in. And if we say, it doesn't show the change here, but I can say refresh status. See, now it says that's modified. So it checked the time and date that it was modified. So this is the last time it looked at it was 122. It's now 149. So I'm going to say update, and we'll say OK. And you see all of these have now changed, except for this one, which was not actually linked. So that does bring up the idea of, do we want to have this linked to the external file? So remember what I did earlier where I modified it in its original position, then overwrote the MOD file, and then of course everything updated. In this case, I opened the MOD file directly in a separate ArchiCAD and updated it. So it had the same effect here, but this one did not change. So these are two legitimate ways to do it. You don't want to mix them probably. But in one case, you're working in your natural design. So let's say you're working on this project and you're working on the design and you're changing it, you're adding more detail to it, more information as you go along, and it's in context. And you know that if you just simply select all the stuff and resave it on top of the original MOD file, these will update. In their other cases, you might say, let's take this, save it where, remember there was this option, did I just, here, let's remember this option, let's suspend groups here. Here, there was this option, oh, actually we're on the first floor. This is a hotlink. That's sort of odd. How did that become the hotlink? Oh, this is our file that has the two buildings. So it's part of that hotlink one. Let's go to the other one. Whoops. Here, no, that's the master template. Oh, I guess we had closed the original one. So we could remember we could select these elements here, and when we did the save selection as module, there was the option to replace the selection with this hotlinked module file. Now this, I guess, is gray right now because it is part of a hotlinked module already. But if those elements were, if we were, for example, to say that I wanted to break that link, we could do it. So there is this choice here. I know I'm not explaining it as well as I could. Let me just try it again. If you want to continue to work on these elements in context, then don't substitute them as hotlinked module, into a hotlinked module. You can then keep on working on them and then resave them on top of the MOD file, and all of the instances will update. But if, on the other hand, you create them originally, but then you'd prefer to work on them in that separate file, maybe you have somebody else working on them, or just it's a separate sort of phase of work to develop that unit plan, then certainly replacing the original work that you've done with an MOD file, and then opening that MOD file periodically to work on it becomes a very legitimate choice. Okay, so let me see here in terms of what I haven't covered with this. All right, so there is one other more complicated situation that I want to bring up. So we don't have a site here. Let's go and say that we have a site. So I'm going to go in and we'll take this here and let's go add this, add a little more information, and let's take this up to 10 feet and this up to 6 feet and this to 3. Okay, so now if we go to 3D, we're going to see the site is actually coming up through the building. Of course, that wouldn't be a good design, but let's just say that we had something on here. I'm going to go and take this and I'll cut out a hole. So I'll just press down here and say I want to, instead of adding this, I'm going to cut out a hole here for the building. And then I'm also going to cut out a space, just something like this. All right, so now, and then I'll put in another mesh in here, and we'll make this other mesh something where the top is concrete. Okay, so now what I've got is if I go to 3D, we're going to see a rather strange thing. Let's just take these points down. Here, I'll take it down there. We'll just take the heights down. All right, so now I've got something that, and maybe we'll take this one point down also to there. Okay, so now I've got this in context, where there's a pad out here and there's terrain. Now, if we were designing this building, maybe we were putting in the doorway, we were putting in some things for how access would be on this side. Then we might want to, while we're working on the building design, actually see this. So here's the situation where we want to be able to see. Right now, this building here. If I make sure groups are active, this building is being referenced from an external file. That's where the design is going to be worked on. But we need to be able to see when we're working on it how it fits into the terrain. So forget about the fact that this building here is a copy of it. Imagine these are just separate buildings. How would we work on this and be able to see the terrain or the context in reference to it? Because right now we can't edit it, and if we open it up, we won't be able to see it. So let's see how this works. It's actually pretty simple, very nice little trick to do. So if I right click on this, there's an option to edit this module in separate ArchiCAD. So this module, this hot-linked module, is actually a PLN file. So in this case, it's 2 stories, and it's going to open that up, and we're going to be able to just see the file that I worked on 20 minutes ago and was closed. In other words, when I switched gears, I actually had ArchiCAD close that. So we're going to open that again. So when we have that open, we'll be seeing the building in isolation, but we want to be able to see the site. So how can we do it? We don't want to copy the terrain over, because then we'd actually have duplicates of the terrain, and if the terrain or the landscaping or the context changed, it wouldn't be kept up to date. So how are we going to do that? We're going to hot link in the site. So you can see here in this building, it's 3D, there's no context, right? And let's just say that I wanted to put in a door. I'll just sort of pop in, a door there. And I'll just go ahead and save this. By the way, when I say save it, it says, there's some things haven't been updated. You notice that these chairs were not updated. It's saying, before you save it, you might want to get everything up to date. And I say, yeah. I could say, no, I don't care, but let me just say update and continue. And you can see how all of these chairs have updated. And I just saved it here. Let me go back to the other site here, and let's then go and say, let's see, I guess in order to get this updated, we need to go to the Hotlink Manager. You have to be on the floor plan to do it rather than in the 3D view. So let me go back to the floor plan, and we'll just go to Hotlink Manager. And you can see that it says, oh, that's been modified. We'll say update. And now you can see here's that door that's been put in. So what I'd like to do is be able to see how that door fits into the context, because right now I'd have to go back and forth and make sure the door was, the right relationship to it. So here's what I'll do. I'm going to save this site plan. So such as it is, it's just a little terrain model around these 2 buildings. But let me say save this. So we're going to go, this is site plan here. Now the site plan includes elements like the terrain mesh that are editable, and elements like the building that are linked, that you can't edit the individual things in them because they're linked to the external file. I'm going to go back to the to this hot-linked module here, and let's bring in a hot-linked module that is the site. So when I do that, I'm going to go and say choose hotlink, and I'm going to go say create a new hotlink. Basically, I need to go find another file. In this case, it's going to be the site plan. And I have to make sure I'm in the right format. In other words, is it a module file that I want or a project? I do want it, in this case, the project. So I'll select that and I'll say, yeah, well, maybe I only need one story. Here, we could do that. I'll say, okay. Um, but there's an option here that we haven't done, which says skip nested modules. So if you think about it, if I brought in the site plan and it brought in the buildings, the other buildings, or all the buildings that were placed, then we'd have duplicates. We'd have buildings on top of buildings. It would get very confusing and perhaps impossible to really manage. But by skipping nested modules, it means it'll only get the native elements from this site plan file, skipping the buildings that have been placed in. So you don't get this circular relationship. So I'll say place it. And it says, do you want it in the center of the current view or original location? It's very important here that we put it in its original location so it fits in exactly where it should. And I can zoom to the pasted elements, so it'll just sort of zoom out a little bit, and you can see how it fits in. Okay. Now, this element here has square handles because it's in the site plan file. It's part of the Hotlinked module for the site plan. But here now I can see this. So I could say, you know what, let me just move this door. And I'm just going to be sort of arbitrary. I'll move it down to the corner here, and then I'll move it up, 2 feet or something like that. So I've now placed part of this building in relationship to its context. Just as a simple demonstration, the context is linked in from the other file, but I'm able to see this when I'm working on it. So you can have files hot linked into each other as long as you use the skip nested modules option for that. So I'll just say save this, and we can go back to the other site plan one. Notice that the door has not updated. That's because, of course, as usual, I need to go to the Hotlink Manager and say, this is modified, go ahead and update it. Now, the reason why Graphisoft does it this way instead of automatically updating it is that sometimes things are being worked on and they're not ready to be shared. In other words, someone may work on something and it's in process, and you want to have the last clean version in your file, so you want to be able to manage when you're going to update, so that it gives you that flexibility. Right now, because I'm in training, it's sort of annoying every time having to go and update it, but basically, this is something that you have the option of updating when you want. Now, whenever you open a file, it'll tell you if hot links are out of date. And whenever you save a file, it'll also tell you. So you will get notification there. So that's what we'd see. So I'll say OK, and you'll see this update now. Now, final thing I'm going to do for these hot links is talk about how, say, elements can join together. So far, we've been doing things that are sort of touching each other or in the context of each other, like these furniture. They're next to the walls. This building is linked into a site plan and it's sitting next to the mesh. But we haven't actually been having walls, a wall that's part of a module tied into walls that are not part of a module. The short answer to that general question is that walls will clean up to each other just like they would normally, even if one is part of a module and one is not. Now, let me just do a quick experiment here. So if I go to, God, I have so many of these open here. Let's see, this is the module file. Let's see, this one, untitled. All right, this is the master template one. I'm going to sort of skip that. I'm going to open the, let's see, the model. Actually, no, what? No, we don't have to do that. Let's go back to this one. No, that one there. Okay, so this is the original element, and remember that these two elements are grouped. These are, these are the original source of what became that MOD file there. So I'm going to actually close out this one. I'm just going to close this file here so that we don't have that open. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this wall. Remember, this wall is sort of part of or a part of the main file here, but instead I'm going to go and select it to be part of this module. So sometimes you want to have multiple, you want to have, in addition to furniture, you want to have partitions and actual doors and things like that. So let me select these, and we'll go and we'll save them as a module. And let's actually save it with a different name. So I'll call it number 2 here. And now if I select this module, let's get rid of these 2 walls, and let's select this module and say, can we, if we go to the Hotlinked module settings, can I choose a different hotlink? No, it does not allow me to choose a different hotlink. So I'd have to go and delete this. Let's just go and delete these guys, and I'll just place new hotlinks. So let's go to external content, place hotlinked module, and I'm going to go and choose a hotlink. Say this is not important, this nested one here, but I'm going to choose a hotlink, and instead of being the ones that I've already got, I'm going to choose the new. And you have to remember, I have to go back to module file here, and I'll pick the new one and select that. Just a single story, this one here, and say OK and place. And then if I move this over, let's see, how much was it? 8 feet? No, 9 feet, something like that. I don't know, 9 feet, we'll try that. There. Okay, so now this module, this is a module with the wall, and you notice that this actual, the wall just cleans up the same as the other wall. So even though this is part of the module, it cleans up just fine. And so of course I can select this, and I can, drag a copy of it over. And so now I'm talking about a layout that includes, walls, and they clean up, just fine, just the way you would expect. So you can have walls in there. You can also have doors and windows. So let's instead, well, this is, I don't have a really good example here because we wouldn't have doors between these offices. We'd only have doors leading into it. But actually, let's, God, there are some more complications here, or options for complex projects that I haven't covered. Let's see if I can do these in the next 10 minutes, because I don't want this lesson to get too long. Question I see is from Ken Andrews: how do modules affect door schedules? That's a very good question. So let's look at this. So doing a couple of things here. So I'm going to go and pop in a door. Let's make this door a little smaller. So instead of a 3 feet door, we'll make it 2'6". So a little smaller door there, and drag this to there. Okay, so this door has a number based on the just that it was the second door that I placed into the project, and I can go and multiply a couple of copies here, and I'll just say take it over to there. So obviously I'm working quick and dirty. These are not placed in exactly the same location, but if we look at the door schedule, so if we go to our schedules here, so we have what looks like just 2 doors. That's because it says the doors that are identical are going to be shown as a single entry. I can open that up, and you can see now there are these 3 doors here. Now, one of the things that we might want to see on a door schedule is the location of the door. So let's go into the scheme settings here and say that we'd like to have under window and door, there's an option for putting in the location. Now, there's from zone, or let's see, there's to zone. So in this case, if the door is open going into a zone, we might want to have that as the location. So I'll just say add that in, and let's say OK. And right now, if I hide this, you can see that's empty because we don't have any zones on this project. So let's just go to, let's go to the floor plan, and we'll put in some zones here. So if I go in fact, actually, let's, well, for now, I'm just going to put in a zone manually. So go and say, find the boundaries of this room here, and this zone name we're going to call, you know, office 1, you know, room number 1 here, and let me just drag a copy of it here. Whoops. Actually, let me undo that. Let's just eyedrop this here, and we'll pop in another one here. But this one we're going to you know, change to office 2 and number 2, and we'll maybe move this down to there. Okay, so now if I go back to that door schedule, we're going to see that the information is available here for these doors. Now I can change this and say just location or room. It's still going to show the same information, even though it originally said to zone, but you know, I can definitely, you know, have that there. And I could move this around. If I go to the scheme settings, you know, I could say move this up, you know, into you know, a different position, and now you can see how that's showing up like that. So these doors are identical. They're showing the zone information in this. Now this does not relate to the hot-linked modules, but it does start to show up in terms of some options that you might consider. So the hot-link module, if I select this module here and I go right-click on it, under Hotlink module settings, there is the option of a master ID. So basically each one of these modules has the option for an ID that can be used for certain scheduling purposes. So I'll just call this you know, Office 2 as an ID, and we'll look at this one here as sorry, if I right click on this and say Hotlink module settings, we can have this Office 3. All right, so now these are two Hotlink modules that are identical except for their, what is it? Sorry, I forgot the term. It's the master ID. So this feature of the master ID was added at some point. I can't remember. It might have been ARCAT 14. I can't remember, but it does allow some more sophistication in terms of the schedules. So, you know, one of the things that you can do for doors, in fact, you can see here that it's showing 2 and 1. So the door marker is actually showing the zone information. In other words, this zone here, just to prove it, if I select this and I change this to 9, so I've just changed the zone here, and as soon as I zoom in or out, you'll see that the door marker changes. So the door is able to pick up in terms of the dimension marker. So we can see the D02, but it also has the option for the text. Say it says room and door ID. So we can, it's showing the room as well as the door ID. It's not, the preview isn't showing it, but it's showing the room number in there. So some of the standard Graphisoft door markers have that option. Now imagine that the zone information is actually part of the module. So let's go and remember this. This is our source for the module. So in other words, we've now got a room configuration that is, excuse me, that includes a zone here. And well, we can leave the text in there as well. These are, I mean, obviously you probably wouldn't want to put both of them at the same time. But let's go and save the selection. External content, we'll say save selection as module. And in this case, I'll make it yet another one just to avoid confusion. We could overwrite something, but I'll just say number 3. So now it's number 3, and let's just get rid of this module and the zone and this module as well, and let's place in the a hotlink module, and we're going to choose a hotlink. We're going to go to the new hotlink and pick number 3, and just a single story. We're going to say OK, and we're going to place it. And now it initially comes in right on top, but we can take this 9 feet here, and then now you notice that the office here, or this this configuration here, they both have the same number because these are the same zone here. So this uh, what I want to say is that, and let's just do this, drag another copy of this. Let's say drag a copy, the 9 feet. Okay, so now we have 3 that look similar. But remember that I can set up in the Hotlink module settings, this master ID, and I can say the master ID, whoops, not of this one. I'm sorry. I want to go into Hotlink module settings and call this Office 3. So now each one of these has a different name. Now this door information, this is where I haven't experimented with it, so I'm just going to have to describe what I understand would be possible. You could, let's say, if you were to have, instead of each of these offices being a single Hotlink module, you could imagine that you have a hospital where you've got a very complex floor plate, but the 3rd floor, the 4th, and the 5th are all quite similar. And so you would have, rooms, and so you might have rooms, 1 through 25, in this wing, but you're going to be calling them rooms 201 through 225, or 301 through 325, or 401 through 425. So basically having the story number as a prefix. So if we were to take this, the entire story floor plate as a module, and have the zones with the correct information that this is room 25 or 22 or 18 on this story, but prefix it with the story, you'd be able to, in some combination, generate schedules saying that here's the schedule for the 3rd floor or the 4th floor by combining the story number with the zone number, which indicates the particular room. So I haven't worked out the details of that. It would be something that I think any of you who have a complex, really complex projects like that would understand the concept of it, that you're going to have similar floor plates, but just some differences, perhaps just even as simple as a different story number before the room. And so there would be some combination of the doors and the zones being able to reference on the plan, as well as in the schedule, the story or the module information, and combine it. In other words, do some text combining story number 4 and the fact that it's room number 21, and saying this is room 421. So I think I don't have it's not a quick way to demonstrate that, but at least giving you some ideas for how that type of thing could work. So we've been going about an hour and 20 minutes, so we're well over the hour that I had targeted for. Let's finish up my main lesson and open it up to some questions here. I see that there was a question from Ken Andrews about how does the modules affect door schedules. If you have doors in the module, in other words, let's say we actually had these doors as part of the module and they were numbered, door 12, 13, 14, or whatever, they would show up in the door schedule. You can, in the door schedule, you can do certain criteria to say, do I want to include these or not? I think there are ways that you can filter them in or out, and ways that you can combine in the schedules. Let's say room numbers or um, floor numbers with that. So I'm going to have to sort of wave my hands and say, uh, in the context of a complex project, this can be worked out, and through some combination of the data points. Let's see. David Norman says, if the MOD file location is changed on your hard drive, will the PLN file still be able to find it, or will it need to be relinked? So the answer is, if I were to go, and let's just go back out to where this is. So let me just create a new folder here. Just call this modules. So I've just created a folder, and I'm going to take all of these and put them in there. So now they're in a different location. They're buried within this. Now, if I go to this file here and say external content Hotlinked Manager, you'll see it says these are missing because they were moved. So it doesn't actually disappear from the project. If you reopen the project, they'll still be there. The information has been copied in to the project file, but it can't update it until you relink it. So here, the way to do this is very simple. I relink this from a file. I make sure I know which one this is. This is demo 1. I go in here and say, there it is. Go get it. It says, it's been relocated. I can go in here and say, relink this one. And here's the one I want there. It would be nice if it would sort of pick up the fact that these are in the same folder and automatically relink it, but you have to do it one by one. So now these are both handled, and they don't actually need to be updated. We've made note that they're in a new location. And when I say okay, it'll just remember that. It knows that it hasn't been actually changed, it's just in a new location. So it's now happy. If I go back in later to the Hotlink Manager, you'll see that they all say, okay, I've got the latest version, we don't need to update them. That's the same thing that'll happen with Master Template. When you install Master Template, it has some hot links like the interactive legends, and they refer to the locations on my computer when I was working on the template before I saved it for distribution. When you install Master Template, it'll say, hey, there's some Hotlink modules that are unavailable, and it says maybe they're on a BIM server that's not running, or they give some options there, but basically it's just saying I don't know where to find them, and you can ignore that because it has all the data. In others, it's still in the file, but if you want to avoid getting that warning message, then you want to just use that relocate option under the Hotlink Manager. All right, so it looks like there are no further questions, so I think we'll finish this up. If you do have any follow-up questions, or those of you who listen to this or watch this in the best practices member area, please add your comments and questions to the page down below. This has been Eric Bobrow. Thanks for watching.